What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to take a look over here at the Bitcoin price chart, the XRP price chart, and along with the altcoin market to get a snapshot of where we're at as we head into a holiday week. This Thursday is Thanksgiving. Lots of people are on vacations, including me. I will be as well. So we'll take a look at these charts from a larger time frame down to a shorter time frame to just kind of have a snapshot of where we are currently right now as we head into this holiday week, as this will be the only video this week. But of course, as you get ready to start off this new week, we're coming off of Bitcoin hitting almost $80,000 last Friday. Prices remained stable throughout the weekend. I posted this over there on X Friday afternoon that for a reference point of where Bitcoin is compared to past behavior, it has reached the 100-week moving average. Bitcoin has only come back to the 100-week moving average during bear markets, and in 2014, 2018, and 2022, the 100-week moving average provided a period of temporary stability. So what I'm hinting at here, obviously, is that we've hit the 100-week moving average throughout the entire bull. We've never come back to hit the 100-week moving average. We historically only come back to it in moments like these right in here, and it does provide a period of stability. We can go back to 2018. Same thing in here. We break through the 50 and, don't quite make it to the 100 week, but we do spend a lot of time here in between the 50 and the 100. Then when we go back to 2014, we get down to the 100 week moving average. We spend some time stabilizing here and then eventually do fall down. So it's normal for us to find some supports and to just kind of hover around in here after we get through that 50 week and near that 100 week moving average before things do end up going lower. But this normally is a place where things do stabilize for a little while. Another thing supporting the idea that things could stabilize was what we also saw on Friday in regards to trading volumes with the ETFs. The Bitcoin ETF saw record high sell volume yesterday. I posted this on Friday, right? So we're talking about Thursday. And then record high buy volume today, which was Friday, which are common markers of things settling down. So it may be hard to see this on your phone if you're looking at this on a small screen, but down in here, we do have very high sell volume coming in on Thursday on each of the major Bitcoin ETFs. Then there on Friday, followed by very high buy volume on each of them as well. That's typically a marker that things start to settle down. You're getting capitulation sell volume followed by aggressive buy volume. We see those same markers at tops a lot of times, extreme buy volume followed by extreme sell volume, and that'll mark reversals. So these are typically signs that you see that things are going to settle, which would also corroborate things like this, where we break through the 50 week, you get near the 100 and things just kind of settle down in here. So, then comes the theory of everything after that, right? And I find myself spending a lot of time theorizing about it too, because it's like, obviously I got heavily into a lot of cash up in here, and I keep asking myself, well, do I want to try to play that? Do I want to try to play a move back to the 50-week moving average? Historically, we do go back to the 50-week moving average, right? That's just what ends up happening. You also see out there as well is that you typically come back to the 200-day moving average. You can see that right there in 2022. It gets back to that 200-day moving average, which is way over here right now, depending on how much time that takes for that to shift down. But, right, that's a fact. Same thing goes over in here back in 2018. Again, to give an idea of that moment right there, I'll put a little circle on it right here just so we can see it once I flip to that weekly, right? That's that moment of breaking through the 50-week moving average, finding some stability, and then it does go back to hit that 50-week moving average before things start coming down, which back on the daily time frame, that's that 200-day moving average as well, right? So the last two bear markets for Bitcoin of breaks of the 50-week moving average, finding that 100-week moving average, the precedent set by them is that it goes back and hits the 200-day moving average and hits the 50-week moving average. So like many, I also find myself in the position of saying, all right, do I want to stab at some of this stuff, throw some cash back into the market and shoot its way back up? And I expressed on Friday that I'm having a difficult time doing that. I'm very well aware of these things, and it's like obvious, right? Like if this thing is just going to do what 2018 and 2022 did, then there's a nice rally to come in here. Why not take advantage of it? But I remind myself that it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm just trying to catch a rally within a bigger context move, or trying to catch a rally in here within a bigger context move, right? The consequences of getting any of it wrong could be devastating, right? Because the move that comes after this in both times is the capitulation move in both of them, right? And, who wants to be caught into the capitulation move? Not me. So, we're left in a moment in time right now where that's a realistic outcome that could potentially end up happening in here. I have other things that could corroborate that to say that could possibly be true. But, it's also understanding the broader context of Bitcoin and where it's at and the things that we've talked about for the last couple of months in regards to saying, hey, look, this does look like a bear market for Bitcoin. We have the signatures in there of bearish divergences with higher price action, just as we saw and expected to end up showing up when we had bearish divergences with higher price action in past market cycles. So the context of these are very similar to each other in regards to what got us here. And with it now being November 24th, we've now been talking about this for over 2 months. We were talking about this in mid to late September, right? We even have lower relative strength in here beyond both of these points in here. So you move out to the monthly time frame to even see that in the relative strength index that this thing has broken down from both of these dips in here to see, wow, look, price is still even higher than both of these locations where the strength was higher. So it's just an even bigger divergence happening here on the monthly time frame when, of course, we're getting the MACD cross. We got our red coming right in there as that is starting to flip now, just as we saw back in 2022, which where were we? The exact same context that we're talking about, right? Right when Bitcoin breaks through the 50-week moving average, it heads down to there, right? We have the same context happening in here right now on weekly and monthly timeframes for Bitcoin. So you don't have anything screaming that like that's impossible to happen. The contexts are similar, the divergences are similar, right? But it's just willing to take the shot at it. And I find myself in a very difficult position to try to want to take that shot, really due to things that we've just kind of been talking about for a while that I think it's a hard guess in here on whether or not it's going to do exactly what 2018 and what 2022 did, or if this thing is only going to be here temporarily for a week or two and then continue shifting down lower to go break through it a little bit more aggressive pretty soon. Things like XRP, right? These have been things that we have followed. And I think a lot of people are still confused by where's the blow off top, instead of saying to themselves, like, this is really just like 2022. And the people asked all the exact same questions at the top of 2022 because it was the first time we had seen it, where we didn't have a blow off top happen in all the altcoins and all that kind of stuff, right? You can go back here and look at XRP during that time, right? Like there's no blow off top that comes for XRP in here. This is just a retracement that happens in here. And this is what we've seen in most coins happen in this moment, is to get something like that and there not be a blow off top. This was the outcome for like 90% of the altcoins here in 2022 of no blow off top into that moment. So it's fascinating to see that the price action is acting on like the coins that did actually set the new high, but still there's like no blow off top that happened there in late 2021. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about moving averages on XRP. It also is below that 50 week in between that 100 week. But more importantly, the indicators happening in here of looking at it through that lens of like 2021 and 2022. It did all that same stuff where, the excitement is in May of 2021. The excitement is over here in January of 2025. Then it's a weaker rally that happens in here. And then things start to progressively deteriorate, just like we're seeing down in here on the weekly time frame. So it's not that our indicators aren't implying it as well, along with similar price action to what we've seen at the top of 2021. And the things that, lead me to concern with XRP still is that really it's still just behaving really right on cue that, there's your post-liquidation range. There's your post-liquidation range. Now we're shifting below. You're shifting below and you're just kind of bouncing around in here right now. Now, let's pretend price action does act like that. Well, that does corroborate a move like this happening in here, because in that time, that's what Bitcoin was doing, right? Bitcoin had come off those highs, the aggressive fall back down to the lows, and then it does a little ABC action in here. And this is all the price action that happens in here. And crazy as it is contextually, right? That's really where we're at with Bitcoin as well. And what I'll do is I'll hide XRP. I'll hide this one and show you, right? These are the contexts that we're talking about. These are the same market dynamics we're talking about for Bitcoin. They also happen to be the exact same dynamics that we've been talking about for these things as well. So we have XRP reaching the same levels as this does in the same context at the same time, right? Where it does that little sweep of the lows in here after the post-liquidation range, right? And still stability could come in here for some time and it would corroborate Bitcoin, trying to shift its way back to that 200-day moving average or the 50-week moving average or whatever. But still, I find it difficult to be able to take the shot at it because of a couple of things I see over here on Bitcoin, on whether it's really actually going to do it or just actually go ahead and plow through. While this may sound cruel to say, it's not intended to be cruel. It's just talking about it from a market dynamic perspective. We know at bottoms and at tops, the crowd always gets wrong-footed, right? Reflect back on the top of 2021. What was everybody screaming for? They're screaming for 100K, right? It stops at 69K and then wrong foots everybody. Go to the bottom of the 2022 bear. What is everybody looking for? 12K, right? It reverses at 15.5K. And then for the next year, people are still screaming for 12K, which never ends up coming. And the price just continuously shifts up. So the crowd got wrong footed looking for 100K at the top. They got wrong footed at the bottom looking for 12K. Are we in a position right now where the crowd is completely wrong footed? And the answer is obviously yes, because there's a $20 billion liquidation. And that's just going to be of leverage traders. If leverage traders were massively overly long, well, then what are spot holders? They were obviously long too, right? And the hard thing about this is that if you did not get out in here, there's been no exit. There's been no exit door. So what do we know? Everybody's looking for an exit door. And, I think people think, oh, it can't go down because everybody is so bearish. And frankly, I don't think it's that everybody is so bearish. I think it's just max pain right now because it's been straight down. And we get confused on X on whether or not, people's toxicity is actually being bearish or is it just max pain? And there's no question this is a max pain move. There has been no exit door. So what does everybody want? Well, they certainly want an exit door. Give me an exit door. But if everybody wants that, is that going to be the most probable thing that happens? Or is it going to do this and then just, keep going down? That's what makes it very difficult for me to take the stab at it and say I'm willing to throw cash back in and go at it. While I do know when you get to the 100-week moving average, it's very common to bounce back and go back to the 50-week, go back to the 200-day. I see dynamics in here that tell me it might not, and I know that it's what the crowd really wants. In addition, we talked about, the altcoin market last Friday and how I just don't really like the setups that are happening here in general on the altcoin market of where it's at and how the price behavior of this is like a bear flag breaking down after an ABC correction, and that there's the potential in here of it just kind of being stalled momentarily before that ends up coming. And all we're waiting on is a couple of catalysts to show up. So while I am very well aware of what historically happens after we get to the 100-week moving average, and we can sit there and say, well, this is what always happens after we break the 50-week. We eventually go back and touch it. We break it. We go back and touch it. That would imply a visit to at least, $100,000. This has been, a lot of what I have been discussing and showing throughout all of 2025. We started talking about it back here in February of 2025, that this would be the setup to be looking for. Then the confusion, of course, being this top in here, right? We talked a lot about that, of all the differences that this top could end up looking like. And then we end up getting the up thrust after distribution and being like, okay, wait, that's it. Rather than like a standard parabola in here. And it's just whether or not, did our top happen back in here? This is actually all of our retrace behavior in here. This is the liquidation happening in here. There's our liquidation. I do find it hard to try to chase a move back to the 50-week when I'm not so sure that it's realistically probable to happen. I think there's a chance this is actually a breakdown happening in here, and I have to kind of be pretty cautious of that. So as we head into the remainder of this week, it does seem like we have found some stability in here, but the things that I'm going to be watching for to say, maybe we're not going to go back to that 50-week moving average, is really paying attention to what happens to Bitcoin at around that $91,000 to $93,000 level to make sure this isn't just a move back up to plunge down like so, coming below that 236 to only shift back up and continue, and to make sure, right, that isn't what's going to end up happening in here, right? As for XRP, we see all these same markers too over here on this weekly time frame, right? Where that new high gets set right there on that weekly bearish divergence. So kind of being cautious there of that 225 to 235 level. If it's able to get that high, and just kind of a throwback happening in here. And then, well, as for the altcoin market, right, it's just making sure it's not hanging on by a thread right now. So I think you can kind of see, right, like obviously it would be nice to go for a chase in here and to go back for that 50-week moving average. But there's things that are sitting here right now that are just kind of like that caution of being like, are you sure you want to take that risk? And I'm not so sure I want to. I think I'd rather just keep the bags that I have currently right now. And then if this opportunity does get presented, I'll take it as an opportunity to de-risk even more, right? And just to be very clear, right, of course, my bias is that, we're going to be revisiting these lows probably somewhere between 69, 65K seems the most likely currently. We'll see what happens as time gets closer and what price action is looking like as we get there. If we get there, those biases, of course, are just based off of indicator and price behavior that are happening in here. But I do have full intentions of totally buying. And so to not be confused of being like, this is like ultimate gloomer and doomer kind of stuff happening in here. And this is all just technical behavior until these things clean themselves up. I don't know how you stay bull or try to be bull when you have that environment happening right in here right now. But once we get to interesting price levels, I'd be more intrigued to try to do it. Now we just got to wait for it to get there and see what it looks like and then, take the stab. So I get it. It's not fun when we do all the bear videos and things like that. I'm just trying to present the data to you the best I can and do it in a way that is true and honest to show you the reasons why, rather than just some theoretical, hey, look, we go to moon because of this and then we come down here because of this. I don't really have a reason to tell you why. I just have a gut feeling. I'm trying not to do that. Everything I try to do is try to be like, look, here's how the market's behaving. Here's historical precedent set by it. Here's what the indicators look like, how price is behaving. But I don't see anything telling me that that's probable. And I do see historical precedent set to say that this is possible. But I also see precedent set by it to say, hey, it's also possible it doesn't. And we're just going to go ahead and go for it. In that this market created mass confusion with all of this stuff up in here. And the upthrust after distribution was actually our retracement happening in here. And so if we are just sitting right there right now, I'm not so sure I want to have fresh capital caught in it. So I will cheer with everybody else for a move back to the 50-week moving average. Just while we're on our Thanksgiving break, be real mindful of that $91,000 to $93,000 price level for Bitcoin, and be real mindful of that, 220, 235 area over there for XRP. I hope I did a good job showing to you how the market dynamics all fit this type of environment by using indicators, price action, and historical behavior. And when we get together next week, hopefully our picture will be very clear, and then we'll take it from there. So as we get ready for the Thanksgiving week, I'll share the things that I am thankful for. I am very thankful to have food. I'm very thankful to have water. I'm thankful to have a roof over my head and somewhere to sleep comfortably at night. I'm thankful to have a vehicle. I'm thankful to have family that loves me and that I love. I'm thankful that my kids and my wife and myself are healthy. I know all those sound like pretty basic things, but if you took just one of those things away, life would be very, very, very difficult. I'm incredibly thankful to have this YouTube channel and opportunities that it gives me to be able to travel and meet people and build a community and make friends. I don't take that for granted. I do know this is an insane thing that has happened in my life, that I have this. 10 years ago, I would have never imagined it. I'm thankful to be sober for over 12 years and all the stability that comes with that in my life. And I'm thankful that you watch my content and that you made it to this part of the video. It's not many people that make it to the very end of the video. So if you're one watching and listening to me right now, that's a rare statistical thing. Only about 30% of people make it to this exact moment in the video. So thank you. But I'm excited to have a week off. I'm excited to spend it with my family. I'm excited that my kids get to have an entire week off of school just for one meal that I'm going to have to nag them to eat. But I get to spend time with them. And then as we get back, we will grind and crank it out until the next one. We get to Christmas. So, all right, that's going to be it, guys. I hope that you have a wonderful week. You can check out the newsletter over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com. This weekend, another one will be published. I don't know if it'll get published early or if it'll get published right there at the very end of the month, but it definitely will be published on or before November 30th. There's, of course, a link in the description of my video to blockchainbacker.substack.com, or you can just go directly there to get a dose of content from me. And of course, throughout the holiday season, you can catch up on all the past ones as well. So either way, I will check in with you guys next Monday. Otherwise, have a happy Thanksgiving. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.